Audiophiles! I have a puzzle. What if there was a piece of equipment that costs $1,500? It does almost nothing and you can't hear it. Would you buy it? Well, you're an audiophile. Spending that much money for seemingly so little proves your commitment. Let's have a quick unboxing, then I'll tell you more and hopefully solve this riddle. So what I have here is the Topping Pre900. Topping because I haven't reviewed any topping gear before, so I had to say yes to this one. In fact, I said yes before I had any real idea of what the Pre900 is. Well, I guessed that it's a preamp, but what actually is a preamp these days? To answer that, I'll ask the question, what was a preamp in the olden days of hi-fi? Let's say the 1960s, early 70s kind of era. I'm thinking of the Quad 33, which you'd pair with a 303 power amp. Or the Leak Vari-Slope with a Stereo 20 valve. Yes, valve power amp. These are models I'm familiar with. So you'd have some sources, a turntable, a tuner, maybe a reel-to-reel tape recorder. So firstly, the preamp would have a phono preamp stage to bring the puny output of the turntable's moving magnet cartridge up to line level and apply the appropriate EQ. Secondly, the tuner might not have a volume control. The Quad FM didn't. Neither did the Leak trough line. Well, at least not the trough line stereo version. Your tape recorder might have, but many Pro models don't. Neither of the power amps I've mentioned had volume controls. These days, some do, some don't. So the preamp handled boosting the output from the cartridge and controlled the volume. And, here's a good one, switched among sources. And it drove the power amplifier with a healthy line-level signal. So the Topping Pre900 is a preamp. Well, kind of. It selects among sources, 3 to be precise, all analog, and it controls volume. No phono stage, but 2 out of 3 isn't bad. But remembering that I said that it's a bit of a puzzle, what exactly does make the Topping Pre900 a preamp? I'll try and work it out as we go along. What this unit is, most definitely, is a switcher. The Topping Switch 900 it could have been called. 3 pairs of inputs, so that's good for your CD player, your streamer, your turntable with its phono stage. Or replace one of these items with a lovely Revox B77 Mark III for a bargain 16 grand GBP. Actually, the B77 would make a good source for the Pre900 because it has balanced outputs. And guess what? The Pre900 has balanced inputs on XLR sockets combining tip, ring, sleeve, jacks. So this is the start of what you're getting for spending 1.5 grand on the Pre900. Oh, but there's a quirk. The source selection button is this. Can you see it? Can you see the setup button above it and the display select below? I'd have thought these would be illuminated, but if there's an option for that, I couldn't find it. Oh, well. But there's more. And I would have been disappointed if I didn't see this, or something like it. In a system, it would be nice if every source had a standardized output level. This is a bit of a theory versus practice thing. The practice being that if one of your sources is a TV, then the output level is, or should be, normalized to -23 or -24 LUFS on broadcast channels. But your streamer streaming Spotify will be minus 14. A 9 or 10 decibel difference is a lot. So the value the Pre900 gives at the input is enhanced by memorizing the volume control setting for each input. Nice. Well, quite nice. I'd have been happier if there was a setting for input gain, independent of the volume control. Matching the levels of the inputs would be something you'd set and forget. The volume is something you want to set according to what you're listening to, whether you have guests who like things louder or quieter, what time of day, whether your neighbour is mowing the lawn, whether you have a cold. I've skipped a whole middle section here about what the Pre900 can do, and I will come back to it. But I'd like to comment on the output before my viewers click away to AI-generated Weather Girl videos. Damn, I just lost a whole load there. But here we are with outputs on XLR connectors, but of course no TRS because there isn't room for them. What I'd like you to consider is whether, no pun there, whatever you're driving your power amp or active speakers with has enough oomph to drive it, or them, properly. Commenters who have real-world experience will be welcome to chip in here with their thoughts. Domestically and in home studio audio, I've never had a problem driving my power amps. If I've had a problem, I've never noticed it. Professionally, well, that was some time ago, but I never had a problem driving power amps from a mixing console. But just because I've never had this problem doesn't mean that it isn't a thing, or at least couldn't be. So suppose you have a monster system at home. Monster speakers, terribly accurate but terribly inefficient, and your power amps have monster headroom on the input, but perhaps typical gain. 26 dB or thereabouts is common. Maybe your source can't drive your power amp fully for you to enjoy the ear-splitting, death metal, heavy rock that is your musical preference. This is where commenters with real-world experience might offer their thoughts. Is this or has it been an issue for you? Do you think it's a common situation? As I said, it hasn't been for me. Anyway, if this should be a problem for you and your ears are not adequately split yet, the Pre900 will preempt it. Maybe that's what the pre actually means. The Pre900 has switchable gain on the output. Normally we think of gain as an input thing, but here it's output. We have low, medium and high. Low is what the manual suggests is normal, and I'd probably suggest it too. High gives, according to the marketing materials, an output swing of up to 69 volts peak to peak, which for a sine wave would be just over 24 volts RMS, and a gain of a fraction under 20 dB. I'm going to say that this should cover any reasonable requirement, and then some. And this is where commenters please chip in. Would you use these kinds of levels? Could you? In my view, there's nothing wrong with a bit of bling, if it's tasteful and hopefully can be turned off. So I need to mention the display. If I'd bought this for 1,500 units of currency, I really would want the Pre900 to look nice. As a piece of hardware, yes it does, and I can't fault the quality, look and feel. And the remote too. It's what I'd call a quality remote, not something from the Chinese generic remote factory. I'll just throw in here that you'll need to supply your own 2032 battery. This has been commented on elsewhere regarding various equipment, and apparently it's a shipping thing, lithium batteries not being the least flammable things in the universe. The display is possibly the most tasteful bling I've seen since I started doing reviews in my channel. You can have a VU meter that actually does look like a British standard BS6840 VU meter. Well, what we expect it to look like with appropriate calibrations. But maybe that's for the old-timers. Young audiophiles, by which I mean under retirement age, might prefer the FFT display. I'd call it a spectrograph, but FFT is what Topping calls it, omitting to expand the abbreviation to fast Fourier transform in the manual. Anyway, we get 30 frequency bands all the way from 0 dB to minus 60. The 0 dB reference is 2 volts, 5 volts, or 10 volts, all RMS as you wish. This makes it maybe more than just a bit of fun. But if the amount of fun is too much for you, then you can turn it off and just see the volume. Under the heading of fancy stuff, I'm going to throw in the 12-volt trigger. If you know, you know, and you'll probably regard it as essential rather than fancy. I have to put it somewhere though. There's some other fancy stuff, and I'm sure you'll get that from Topping's website and other reviews. And what's not fancy, in my humble opinion, is no manual. Just a QR code to access one online. As you might have noticed, I can't help referencing the rather high cost of this unit, considering really how little it does. But I'll also reference that what it does well. And I think this next bit will please audiophiles intensely. And when I say audiophiles here, I mean true lovers of audio. So, suppose I was an expert and I wanted to compare two pieces of audio, which I've done a number of times in my channel. So, if I compare an expensive DAC against a cheap DAC, which I have done in the past, I want the comparison to be fair. One consideration, therefore, is to match the levels. It's a well-known thing in hi-fi and pro audio that louder sounds better. It isn't better, it's just louder, but it's difficult not to hear it that way. So levels must be matched. How well matched? Well, it's commonly thought that 1/10 of a decibel is the criterion. And that's what I've always done in my demonstrations, using meters in my digital audio workstation software. Trivially easy, really, in the digital domain. And, of course, many pieces of audio equipment have digital volume controls, as accurate as you like. But, and it is a but for some audiophiles, true audiophiles, that there's a suspicion that digital volume controls mess about with the audio. The worst suspicion being that they throw away low-value bits at low-volume settings. Bit stripping, it's called. And even the name of it sounds ghastly. Now, this is not necessarily true, and I'd hazard a guess that it's hardly ever true these days, but the suspicion remains. So maybe for the best experience, we should handle volume control in the analog domain, and to a precision of 1/10 of a dB. Hey, would you have guessed it? That's exactly what the Pre900 does. If you want the technical deets, the Pre900 uses a relay-switched precision resistor network. Impossible not to like, really. And if I had to stress one thing about it, channel balance is perfect at low levels, which with traditional potentiometer volume controls is often very much not the case. Yes, you can hear it click mechanically as you change the volume, but come on, that's part of the fun, isn't it? I said at the start that the Pre900 does nothing and you can't hear it. Well, I think I've dealt with the does nothing bit. I think that any reasonable person would assess that among all of the items that could possibly make up a hi-fi system, it does about the least. But what it does to a very high standard, surely justifying at least half of the price to an enthusiast or audiophile. But what about you can't hear it? Well, come on, that's exactly what you want. You could have connected your source directly to your power amp or active speakers, and you'd be perfectly happy. But you've just connected another gadget in between. Seriously, would you want to hear it? This is where we need specifications. And if you want to comment that specifications don't matter and everything depends on subjectivity, that's fine. Please add to the discussion in the comments. But for me, well, let's look at the specs. Frequency response 20 Hz to 40 kHz plus or minus 0.05 dB. 20 Hz to 100 kHz plus or minus 0.1 dB. If your hearing is as good as that, go to the Hearing Olympics and win a gold medal. Total harmonic distortion plus noise 0.00005%. You can't hear it. Signal to noise ratio 151 dB. Crosstalk minus 150 dB. Clearly there are details and nuances and I've just given you the headlines. But look at the specs for yourself and check out the charts. Link in the description. Bottom line, you can't hear it. If the Pre900 causes any degradation to the signal from your source, it's as near zero as you could possibly want. And you can't hear it. This, I feel, comes at least close to justifying the rest of the price, again for enthusiasts and audiophiles. The Topping Pre900 is what it is, does what it does. If this is what you need and you can afford it, I doubt you'd be disappointed. As always, I was sent this unit, but other than that and any affiliate links, there's no payment or influence involved. So I can say what I like, and I've said it. See you soon.